Didi Ananda Devapriya é uma monja da organização Ananda Marga desde 2001 e vive atualmente em Bucareste, na Roménia. E é presidente de uma associação de educação neo-humanista e da secção romena da Associação de Auxílio Humanitário Amurtel. Está à frente de 2 jardins de infância de educação neo-humanista em Bucareste. Neste momento está a contribuir para o reconhecimento oficial desta educação na Roménia. Além disso, pratica e ensina yoga e meditação. Eu quero só chamar a atenção que esta palestra vai ser em inglês. Penso que todos têm consciência de que podiam ter tradução simultânea. Se alguém quiser recorrer aos escutadores que existem lá fora, pode ainda fazê-lo. Esqueci-me só de referir que houve uma alteração no programa relativamente a esta palestra. Portanto, não é aquela cujo tema estava inicialmente e nós já não fomos a tempo de alterar o livro.
It is really an honor to be here amongst you, amongst so many people that have come together and are connecting and thinking actively about how to bring about a transition towards a more ecological and just and human society. So I believe he already said it, but I'm wearing orange because it means that I'm a meditation teacher. And I'm also coordinating different projects in Romania that are based on neo-humanist education. We have 2 kindergartens, 2 alternative kindergartens, with inclusive education of kids with disabilities or social problems, and we have a children's home and an after-school center in a rural village. So this is one of the project that I would like to share with you today is involving neo-humanist education. It's one of our kindergartens. Actually, we have 2 kindergartens. Both of them have been pioneering inclusive education in Romania for the past 17 years. We came after the revolution when communism fell in Romania, and at that point, people with disabilities had been invisible in society. They'd all been sent to different institutions, and they were literally invisible. People had never even seen a child with cerebral palsy when we started integrating them into the kindergarten curriculum, and parents were scared that they were contagious. And so there were many obstacles to overcome, and we have been expanding on this curriculum for the past 17 years. Neo-humanist education is an international education movement. It's another holistic alternative form of education. And it has both the aspect of educating inner balance, which is especially important in this ever-accelerating technological world, and also the aspect of expanding the circle of love, creating a more inclusive, universal love. So I wanted to start out with a song that actually inspired the title of this presentation, Expanding the Circle of Love. And it's one of the songs that we use in our kindergarten that I think well expresses the spirit of inclusiveness. So there's the words. What if we made a circle that held everyone we love, kept them safe, kept them happy? How big do you think it would be? Can you feel it? Let your love go and leave no music is a big part of our system of education. We really try to consciously use songs, music, stories, and most importantly, our personal interactions and communication for transmitting these messages to kids. When children are small, they're just like small scientists. They're exploring the world around them, they're observing everything, and they're coming to different conclusions about the world, about what is safe, what is not safe, who is part of me, who is like me, who is not, who is different. They're observing everything, and they're coming to these conclusions. And when we're talking about, a lot of the talks that we've had up until now today are talking about transitioning to a different paradigm, right? And we adults, we know what we should do, what we should think, but it's often very difficult for us to actually change certain things that have been deeply embedded in our consciousness from when we were children. I once saw a presentation on racism, and it said, you really can't start to overcome racism until you can recognize it in yourself. And if you think that it's not there, then for sure it is there. So the beautiful thing about working with the future generations, working with small children, is that these patterns are not yet fixed. They're not completely crystallized. They are still scientists. They are still experimenting. They're still exploring. And they're looking for patterns. And based on these patterns, they come to different conclusions, and those will form their future belief system. But right now, it's like wet plaster, no? And the plaster hasn't yet solidified and set. So it's a really special moment to be able to intervene and give children clear, accurate information about the world that will help them to maintain a holistic paradigm and outlook. Because children are naturally open and loving and full of bliss, no? That's why we're so attracted to them. They're so pure. But they learn how to be in our society. It was really wonderful, the presentation from Andreas that showed that video clip. Children see, children do. They're watching, and they're learning, and they're imitating. And this is how certain cultural patterns get passed down from generation to generation. Yeah, so when children are still small, these beliefs are still on the surface, and you can work with it. When we brought in the children with special needs into the kindergarten, like I said, there were parents that were very, upset and concerned about this, and sometimes even now I've had parents that said, okay, I can understand that it's nice for the child who has special needs that they are, that they get the chance to be with other kids, but what about my kid? And I'm like, well, it's especially important for your children, because actually I see the inclusive education as being even more important for the kids that don't have any apparent problem or aren't from a particular minority, because it's really important from an early age to have exposure to diversity. They've shown studies that just exposure to diversity already reduces the levels of discriminative type of thinking. So it's really important that children from an early age have friends that are different than them. And inclusive education doesn't just simply mean put the kids together in the same location and hope it all, works out fine. For us, inclusive education has a lot to do about creating the right inclusive atmosphere by talking about it, by transmitting messages about love and about that, give that message of inclusion from an early age, about designing activities in which everyone will have a possibility to succeed. So this was an example when we were doing a theme on Greece, and so we did the Olympics. And we designed a type of, a whole bunch, it was a whole day of activities, but this was one of the activities where they were doing a race with holding an egg in a spoon. And we designed it in such a way that everyone would be able to do it, even Daria here, who she has cerebral palsy. Yeah, and they're so proud to be part of all the activities. So social awareness is something that's developing in the child, because when they start out as babies, their consciousness is purely subjective. They're not aware of the existence of other entities. When they cry, it's not a communication as much just an expression from their subjective state of how they're feeling. And they just see the mother as like an extension of themselves. They're hungry and the food appears. And it takes sensorial interaction with the material world. They start to develop other layers of their mind, and this starts developing objective awareness that there is me and there are others. And the feeling of duality comes. This is also about the time that you'll see babies start to develop what they call separation anxiety, where if they're not with their mother or with somebody familiar, they'll start to cry. And they develop, as toddlers, also object permanence. They start realizing, if I drop something, is it still there when I can't see it anymore? So they're really learning about this idea that, wow, there's an external world. And this is where the idea of the other comes. And then as they're developing, this is also where you can start to bring in the idea of empathy, because empathy ultimately has the message, others feel as I do. So it makes others knowable and familiar again. And this is how you're expanding that circle of love. Because for the baby, the circle starts out very, very big. As they start to develop this awareness of separation, then the circle becomes, okay, me, my mother, my dad, the people who are closest to me and who represent safety. And as the child is growing, this circle can keep expanding as they start to understand this lesson that other people feel just as I do, even if they look different, even if they have a different color skin, even if they move differently or talk differently, they have the same feelings. And the most important thing is the modeling of the adults around them. The child's own intuitive empathy must meet with affirming experiences, as it's often abandoned in favor of external authority when confronted with opposing biased information from the powerful adult world. It means the children do have an innate sense of what's right. They have an innate sense of justice. They have an innate sense of goodness. And Leonara from the Waldorf pedagogy, she was expressing this. Children have an inner voice. And our job is to help to nurture that, to help them to be able to listen to that. Because as small children coming into this world with lots of powerful adults that to them can seem like God, it's really important that that voice gets a chance to develop. Because children, when they start seeing, they're observing everything, and it's not necessarily that a child has to be verbally communicated a racist or any type of discriminatory message. They can sense it just from the most polite behavior. And in fact, diversity education's not about learning how to be polite, like the child that goes and says, "Oh, why does she have black skin?" And the mother says, shh, you shouldn't say that, that's not nice. That's not, that's just teaching the child, well, there is something wrong then, but it's not nice to talk about it. You're not supposed to say anything. And that's the message that gets internalized. So, truly teaching children to expand the circle of love and to be able to really accept others isn't just about being polite. It's important that the adults are able to interact with the kids in ways that gives them clear information. And for this, as I said, in contrast to just politeness, superficial politeness, one of the tools that we use for encouraging children to expand their consciousness of diversity is warm, authentic friendships. Friendships are so essential. When somebody is your friend, you can't think about, if you have a friend who has a disability, then it changes how you think about all people with disabilities, because then you look at other people with disabilities and you think, but they're like my friend. So whereas politeness can just mask a fear or discomfort with difference, and that discomfort that comes from feeling separate, warm and authentic friendships are like the antidote to that. So when we do this curriculum, once a year, at least once a year, we have a special 2-week period of the curriculum that's dedicated to diversity. And the title of it is Many Faces, One Human Heart. And this was one of the examples that we did when we were doing a curriculum on the Roma people. Because in Romania, as in many European countries, I don't actually know enough about the situation here in Portugal, but the Roma minority is very much discriminated against. And even my teachers who've been working in humanist education for more than 15 years, when I mentioned I wanted to do this curriculum, when we were having a discussion once about Roma, they were like, yeah, but they really are like that. I'm not racist, not like you people in America. We like black people. But then when we were bringing up that racism isn't really about a particular race. It's actually, these types of sentiments come up especially when it is a minority that is significant enough to represent a threat, at least perceived threat, to the status quo, to economic resources, things like this. And so this was a really interesting project because it started out with this woman who's in the center. She's our executive director. I hired her. I knew she was Roma, and I was thrilled she was Roma when I hired her. I already liked her for many other reasons and her professional experience, but most of the kids that are from our children's home have a Roma ethnicity, and so I knew that she was going to bring like a very new idea for them what it means to be Roma, because up until that point, they wouldn't even admit that they were Roma. So she's given them a different positive identity and role model as a Roma person. She came to this school, and when I introduced her to the circle time, the children knew her. She comes and plays with them all the time. When I introduced her in the circle time, because we'd been doing 2 weeks of curriculum about the Roma people, and I said, Dipani, or Yulia, she is, I first asked them, do you have any friends that are Roma or Gypsy? And they'd said, some had said yes, some had said no. And I said, well, I have a friend. And they're like, who? And I said, Yulia is Roma. And one little girl went, ew, yucky, like this. And that was a wonderful teaching moment. Because then the other kids all started to go, yeah, all Roma people, they steal and they you can't trust them and like this. And yes, I know it's true because I saw it on the news and my parents said like this, and they're all consulting amongst each other. This is where I said those beliefs were not yet solidified. And so we could talk about it. And so I said to them, okay, so you really think that all gypsies steal, huh? Okay, what do you think about Germany? Do you think that in Germany there's sometimes thieves? And I said, oh, yeah. Do you think that in America sometimes there's thieves, that sometimes people steal? And they said, yeah. And then I said, okay, well, does that mean that all German people are thieves? No. All Americans are thieves? No. I said, well, I think that there's good people and bad people everywhere. Not the same everywhere. And then we started talking to Yulia, and she started telling how when she was a kid, when she was little, it hurt her feelings very much when the children didn't want to play with her because they said she was dirty and Roma and had lice. And they felt very sad. And we even did a role play about it, and they all got a chance to role play protecting a friend who was Roma and what they would say if somebody said that to their friend. So this really had a deep effect on the children. The next year when they came back to the kindergarten and we did evaluation, what do you remember from last year? And some of them did drawings, one of them from a family where we knew the mother had not appreciated this curriculum and had a tendency to just, from her attitude, you could tell she had certain sort of superior ideas. So he wrote, we learned that he drew a picture of Roma people in a cart, and he said, I learned that we have to love Roma people. So it was really satisfying to see that it has a deep effect on children when you do these things, and that when we make curriculum, we try to always end with some type of festival, something that will be very memorable, very multisensory. It's very important that you've awakened that total curiosity and that you use it on all levels. And so we created a whole day. Whoops. It didn't work. This is just 2 minutes that will show you, we can end with this actually, that will show you an example from that curriculum.
Dar eu știu că voi și noi toți ne place aventura, da? Da, ne place să călătorim, să descoperim lucrurile noi, da? Și voi toți, eu sunt atât de mândră de voi pentru că v-ați străduit atât de mult să învăț foarte multe instrumentele muzicale. Nu e adevărat? Și sunteți foarte talentați. Și cred că trebuie să căutăm un public nou, da? Să mergem în călătorie și să căutăm alți oameni care o să apreciază foarte mult muzica noastră. Ce ziceți? Mergem? Da!
Noaptea e cu lună plină, fermecată, seara cu striganii nu uiți niciodată. Vai voastră iarbă verde liniștit, iar tiranii cântă și sunt fericiți. Trec tiranii grei, se duc și pe trec tiranii, nu se mai opresc, dar ei se iubesc. Se aude o vioară.
So this is a quote from the founder of Humanist Education, P.R. Sarkar, who is an Indian philosopher and social activist, and who is the inspiration for Humanist Education. Real education leads to a pervasive sense of love and compassion for all creation. Thank you.